Welcome to Caffeinated Mornings, a show built around the idea of more conversation and less presentation. We dive deeper into discussions that go beyond the surface of the work. A big thank you to our sponsors who make this show possible. Today's episode is brought to you by the award-winning, strategically driven, independent, full-service agency, TDA Boulder. And we can't forget Buckross Productions and Coop Studios for helping us capture and share this show with you. A special thanks to The Coffee Ride for keeping us caffeinated, and to Realtor Michelle Sander at Live Sotheby's Realty, CU Brand Studios, Snappy Little Numbers for our theme music, and Pro Photo Rental, Invisible Window, and Boulder Lifestyle Magazine for their continued support. In this episode, we join your favorite designer and host, Jay Farrakane, for an insightful and thoughtful conversation with creative director and copywriter Michael Howard. Michael has worked on some of the most iconic brands and campaigns in modern advertising, including the Truth Anti-Smoking campaign, Volkswagen, Burger King, and Verizon. In this conversation, Michael shares his journey into the creative industry, from non-ad work and a few other diversions, through his 20s to landing at the legendary Crispin Porter Bogusky during one of the most creatively explosive eras in advertising. Together, Jay and Michael explore creativity, optimism, peace, happiness, and the certainty of uncertainty, reflecting on what it means to build a meaningful creative career while navigating constant change. So, settle in, top off your cup, and join us for a candid and caffeinated ride with the thoughtful and optimistic Michael Howard. Let's go.
Thank you for being here, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
Jay.
I'm super excited. For those of you who don't know him yet, Michael Howard is a creative director and copywriter. His career tracks back to one of the most influential agencies in the modern era, Crispin. Sometimes I feel like we say that now and people don't know what the heck we're talking about.
A lot of people don't, and maybe it's for the best.
Maybe. I mean, it just shows what are we really working on here.
That's exactly right.
He came up in advertising during a time when industry was exploding creatively. The internet was still kind of weird. We could do really what we wanted to. The rules were still being invented, and the idea of advertising was pretty damn wide open. Since then, he's worked his way across many agencies, brands, all while navigating industry changes, tech changes, and some personal ones along the way. Today, we're going to talk to Michael about his path, how he thinks about work, life, how to stay curious, and maybe how to stay optimistic while doing it all. We're going to take a quick look at some of his work. Hey, Mike, welcome.
Thank you so much.
And we're going to dive in. And this won't be that painful, trust me. Just a little snippet, just a little bit of share from Mr. Michael and some of the work he's done. And it's always funny, like, I hang out with Michael and then I'm like, oh, you did that?
It's a weird job.
It's a very funny thing. It's actually weird how it permeates our life. I think we first met at the Bogusky Playhouse, like, not even that long ago.
We did. It was about a year ago, and I'm forgetting the name of the mountain bike company. I suppose it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you very much.
Mondraker,
That's
yes.
what I was going to say. I was going to say Dom Raker. And yeah, what was fun about that was the week prior to, or maybe the 2 weeks prior to, 3 separate people were like, you know Jay Farrakane, right? And one was on a bike ride, and one was, and I'm trying to remember who exactly it was, but it was funny to meet you after that quick succession of things.
But the channel got opened, you know?
And I think that's like completely true, that the channel did get open, because it doesn't happen
Otherwise.
Yeah. 100%.
It was funny because even though I had never met you, I did feel this instant, like, I feel like I've known this guy for a long time. And I was trying to figure out why. And you have this, like, an interesting openness and interest in others. Like, sometimes when you meet people, it's like, me. But it was really interesting. And I'm very excited for you to share that kind of openness and interest with us today and your experiences. So, And I actually thought it was really interesting. We started talking about doing posts and stuff to kind of like get people here, and thank you for all showing up. You framed this talk in your own post as we're going to talk about optimism, peace, happiness, and the certainty of uncertainty. And I'm so excited because they gave me an outline of where we can go today. Ryan wants us to stay on track in under 2 hours. Yeah,
I'm going to do my best,
and we'll try and do that. But good creative directors do have a tendency to be like, in the best way, they kind of go, this is, I think, where we should go. And so I really appreciated that.
It's going to be,
the way we're gonna start.
hopefully really, hopefully valuable. That's
Yeah.
the thing I was like worried about the entire time, is that it would be valuable for all involved.
I even think that was telling, because you're like, hey, I want it to be valuable. And then you said, oh, wait, not that your other talks haven't been valuable. And I was like, oh, I'm like, dude, I don't care, man. Like, you know, but I want to kind of start at the beginning. I want to talk about your early creative journey, growing up in New England, and all these things that shape you. I think it's so interesting as creatives today. Man, we go through the same schools, we digest a lot of the same things, and it's interesting because you can still be who you are, and it's those little formative things along the way that just give you those different points, and I wish more people would capitalize on those when they start talking about their work, because I see some creative people, designers, art directors, will try and shape to what they think they want the audience to see them as, versus like, this is who I really am. And I feel like you've never really had that problem of not showing people who you are.
Maybe because it's funny because I didn't get a traditional education from an advertising perspective. And by that, I mean, like, there's a very clear avenue these days. You go to college, you get an undergrad degree, and then they have like different programs that are sort of masters or masters like adjacent that you go to, and basically they draw creative talent from those programs. There's one at VCU and Virginia Commonwealth University. There's one called Miami Ad School, and they have varying degrees varying degrees actually that they offer.
Degrees of degrees.
But I got into it. It was funny. Like I've kind of always wanted to be in advertising in like a freaky way that I think a lot of people don't. A lot of people trip into advertising, and I think maybe there's a version of my story where I did too. But the interesting thing is, when I was a freshman in high school, we had this really great. Do you mind if I go back?
No. But this was what's funny is not many people say I want to be an ad person at 14 years old.
No one does. So we had this really great. And I'm forgetting his name now, this really great guidance counselor who, when we were all freshmen, he took the entire class one at a time and did this sort of like entry interview. And then 4 years later, he did an exit interview for all of us, but none of us at that age remembered that he had done the first interview. So he was able to go through the entire exit interview and then pull out which was very dramatic and cool and fun and interesting, and read back what you were like 4 years prior. And the one thing that was, I mean, there were actually a fair amount of things that were consistent. And one of them was, so as a freshman, you said you wanted to be in advertising, and as a senior, you said you wanted to be in advertising. And I don't really know. I have like versions of like why that might be. And I think it's funny. I have a really good friend who says people get into advertising because like maybe they wanted to make movies, but then thought like, well, ads are shorter and therefore easier. And maybe that's what I want to do instead. But I think it's like, I was an only kid and I grew up in front of the television set in the 70s. And I think like, we were fed like Sesame Street. The Sesame Street story is based on the understanding that beer commercials were being repeated by children, and that was an educational model that could be translated into something where kids could remember things like their ABCs and their 1, 2, 3s. And that is literally the Sesame Street model. And I think I was born in 1971 and Sesame Street was born in 1972. And I think there's probably some like really good correlation with that and the fact that I was spending too much time in front of my television.
But it was interesting because I think the way you told me, it was like your dad dragged you around to like his work.
There is that version,
and
yes.
then you sat in an office like looking at a bunch of advertising journals, and you're like, well, I guess there's an industry.
Yeah,
that's a big leap, I think, to make.
It is. My dad. So I had one of those dads who was like kind of a workaholic, and he would drag me to work. And again, only kid, but he was one of those like just 1 more hour guy, or 5 more minutes, and then 5 more minutes turned into 1 more hour, and then it would turn into 3 more hours. And one time he parked me in the marketing person's office. And I might have been like 13, younger than my own children. And yeah, she had like stacks and stacks of like Brand Week, Ad Week magazines. And I just was like, I'm bored. And I started reading them and I'm like, oh, this is a thing. Like, this is a thing that people do. And it seemed like understandable at that age and cohesive. And like, that seemed really interesting to me on some level.
Well, I think that the interesting thing about your path is I got to learn about how you got to where you were. And being an educator here at the Brand Center, it's like it's interesting to think about when you talk to students. 1 year seems like, in my mind, a very short time frame. And when I talk to someone like you, there was a big break from school to here, and then not even a normal entry. Like I had a book, and talk a little bit about like the let's call it the pause. and how much longer it was till you got back into advertising.
Yeah, it's a very, my dad used to call it a convoluted story, which I think is maybe the reason why I learned the word convoluted. And what it was grew up in New England, moved around a bunch, went to college at the University of Miami, which was kind of a weird choice, but except for the fact that if you grew up someplace freezing cold and brutal, that you just don't want to be there anymore.
Yeah.
And so moved to Miami, went there for like 2 years, and then like through a series of circumstances, I ended up like dropping out and becoming a bartender for the entirety of, and what was funny was it was like the people who I was working for being maybe I think it was like a busboy and a barback or whatever. I was 19 years old and they were short a guy and they trained me how to bartend. They threw me a book one night and then said, memorize it. And then, so that was kind of like my job overlapping in that last part of college. And at some point it was just like, well, I'm tired because I'm staying up late. And, I'm having a hard time making it to class. And so I just dropped out and I figured like that would last a little bit of time and then I would just sort of like get my act together. And cut 7 years later. And that was like, during the 90s, the entirety of my 20s was spent in South Beach, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with.
It's
South
mayhem.
Beach in Miami. It was absolutely
it's a different world.
And it was also too like formative. Back then there was like, they just named it like it was the youngest historic district in the nation, I believe, at that point in time because of the Art Deco architecture there. And what was happening was there was like a burgeoning modeling scene after like a really badly, like a crime-ridden period of time for them. And so a lot of cool things were happening. And I think like, it's funny, I didn't recognize it at the time, but it would be like, if you were in New York City during the early 80s or something like that, feeling that like there's an energy happening and you kind of just got swept away in it. And I mean, like to say 7 years went by in the blink of an eye it sounds trite, but it's like I literally just looked up and it was like, I don't know what I'm going to do
But at least
anymore,
you had that. I think that was interesting that you had you did at some point look up, because some people, like don't stop and like eventually like look up and go like, let's take an inventory.
So I met a girl who's now my wife, and
that usually happens.
And I figured I had to get literally had to just get my shit together if I was gonna like hang out with her. And a funny thing happened because she didn't really have her shit together. She was working at a little silver store down the street from the bar that I was working at. And the store next door was a shoe store. And there was this guy that she got to be friendly with. And I'm forgetting his name now, but he was sort of like a party dude. And he was from Haiti. And he was taking classes at night at this place called Florida International University, which is like a commuter school, like a very large state commuter school. And they came in for drinks one night after their shift. And he got talking to me about it. And then he was like, tell you what, if I bring you an application tomorrow, will you fill it out? And I was like, if you bring me an application tomorrow, I'll fill it out. Fine. Because he was trying to talk me into getting back to school. And so he did. And I did. And then I went back to school.
But it's interesting when an opportunity presents itself, there is a whole mechanism of, and this is the certainty of the uncertainty kind of thing, but like, do you just leap into it? And sometimes that's not wired into everybody, right? And so like, even the way you were kind of telling me, you kind of go back and introduce yourself to someone at Crispin. Was it Alex?
So that was funny because like that subsequently,
because you got to get through some school,
right? You got to get through some school, and there was a 5-credit internship requirement.
That's what it was.
And what happened was, right at that point in time, I was reading the Miami Herald, and there was this little agency in town that had, and when I say little, it was like 50 people at the time or something like that. This is 1990.
Which is crazy to me. That sounds huge.
I know it sounds huge, but like in the grand scheme of agencies, like I think once you hit like 150, you're kind of like rocking.
Yeah.
But like 50 still,
small potatoes.
Small and quaint and stuff like that. But they just won the Florida anti-tobacco account.
Which became truth.
Which became truth.
Yeah.
But right at that moment was just becoming truth. And I walked in there and like they had no internship program, and I had a suit on, and it was not a good suit. It was very.
You weren't even trying to be ironic, right?
No, I thought that that's what you did, and it was it was just weird. And thank goodness. I think they just needed somebody to build desks because they were like growing rapidly. So I was kind of like the IKEA, like, Allen wrench worker kind of a thing. But also too, the other thank goodness of it is that was a period of time when they were doing a lot of photocomps. So photocomps for younger people who once upon a time we had to go into, either you would go and you would buy the objects that you need for a composite image, or you would shoot it on like a really, like back then they were like $10,000 digital cameras that were about that big because the batteries themselves were about this big. Or you'd have to go to a library, stock library, and find somebody who was turned 3/4 in this direction, and they should look like this or be this age or whatever. And they should be pointing, and then you'd have to go through all these library books and find that particular image so that people do
I hate
stuff.
looking for stock,
It was
dude.
brutal,
It's
and that was
Yeah.
my job. And I ended up getting hired as a result of doing all that stuff.
I think it does build your inventory. That is one of those like mechanical muscle kind of building things. You were talking about the time when I'm going to say your title was secretary.
I was a
to
secretary.
Mr. Bogusky.
Yes, exactly.
And like that afforded some interesting opportunity because you get to do that thing, which I think I notice in really good designers is whether they're conscious of it or not, they're always absorbing. They're always paying attention. And give me a little rundown of what it was like being in those offices.
So I really loved it. Like it was exactly what I imagined when I was a freshman in high school that those environments would be like from a creative perspective. Really high energy. They were like rough around the edges, kind of junky. You'd come in early in the morning and like somebody would be sleeping on the floor of an office. Like, you know, they would be there all night long. Like it was all the stuff that like I kind of imagined it would be. So I skipped a lot of school and I spent more time on my internship probably than I should have. And when Alex actually hired me as a secretary, I still had to go to school. For those of you who don't know, Alex is, when I refer to this person, his name is Alex Bogusky. He was the Bogusky and Crispin Porter and Bogusky, which is the full name of the agency. And he was the creative director. And really, he never went to college, so he got into the business, I think, at like 19. And so
Dad
he was
was a
already
designer.
kind of like young and energetic, and like he was a hot shot. And for some nice reason, like he had a little recliner in the corner of his office, and I would go and do his expense reports or his travel and stuff like that, and just sit in that while people were coming in.
And presenting ideas and stuff. Yeah.
Right? And it's sort of like a really like a vulnerable, like raw kind of way, right? Like there, you know, it was to their creative director. It wasn't to a client. It wasn't like polished. It was that very sort of like, you know, hey, I had this kind of rough idea, and they had like a stack of 8.5 by 11 paper. And they would just kind of go through things, and they would riff back and forth, and and nobody questioned the fact that there was another stranger, not a stranger, but you know what I mean,
Yeah,
another
just
person
someone sitting in the corner.
room, and just it was so entertaining, so entertaining. And it's funny. I was just telling you an anecdote earlier about how like I remember being in like Starcom, like Starfish conference meetings, and like as an intern or like Alex's secretary, and I'm like, I don't know how I came to be in that. I wasn't participating in it, but I just loved being in like those meetings and watching them do what they do, and still at the same time I was so busy having to do.
But
the
it's
things
such
that I
an
did
interesting
fast.
way, again, like how like that absorption or being around things. And I've read a couple of articles recently about how creative talent is making their way in, or where the void is for them to enter the workforce. And there isn't this span of absorption anymore. They almost want you to leave school and be ready to work, right? Because the way monetization works in creativity now.
It's interesting. It's funny. Like I'll skip back to the story of how I got hired. Actually, like it's one definitive like sort of thing that I did, and I didn't understand that it was like to get hired. I certainly didn't think that would be the outcome. But what it was there were a couple of creatives who were putting together photocomp again, and they needed. What's strange is in South Florida, you don't have rocks like you do here in Colorado. South Florida is built on coral reef, so you don't think about if you need some like gnarly, jagged like piece of granite or whatever, that you can't just go outside and find it. So they needed one for a photo comp, and I was like, oh shit, I didn't even think about that. Like it never occurred to me. You go outside, you find like pieces of concrete or something like that, but that wasn't quite what it was. And so I went to Home Depot. And I found like a landscaping rock that fit the bill, but it was white. It was like polished white or something like that. I'm like, I don't think it's like the one they want. I'll bring it back. But then I brought it back, and I was like, I'm gonna go back and see if I can get something better. I got to be able to find a place. And you're a kid, you don't know these things, but like when you go to like big landscape, like industrial landscaping, like lots, they've got like, here's all this kind of rock, and here's all that kind of rock, and like these massive like
and they would sell
dump
to you by
truck
a ton.
bins. Right, exactly. So I had a red wagon, literally, and I took one of each. And the guy was like, dude, I don't even know how to charge you for this. Like, we're like, that's not what we do. And so he's like, you can have them. I mean, that's fine. So I put all those things in the back of my car, which is way out, like, it was way out in like the middle of Nowheresville, Florida. And I drove him back, and that got me the job. So like, very literally,
Rocks.
what they saw was a guy who was like, you know what, I know you can color shift in Photoshop, and I know the white rock will probably do the trick. And I didn't understand that I had to go. But I was like, I bet I can find a place. And I think it's funny because my daughter now is 20. My oldest daughter, sorry, my other two children are right here. My oldest daughter is 21 now. And I think there's this idea that like those types of opportunities might not be present given the circumstances today. Like, and when I say like the rock opportunity, like that can take a lot of different forms, but I don't believe it's not available. I don't believe it's not available, and I'm a hardliner
I think we
on
just
that.
get accustomed to the thing. As I've seen this with working professionals, that they'll be like, I can't find the right rock. And I'm like, you have a phone. You can take a picture of the right rock. You don't have to go find it online or something like this. Because sometimes that search of like, we got to find the perfect thing takes so much longer than like, let's just go make it ourselves.
Totally. But,
kinda
and
thing.
also, but I also think like just that sort of like the opportunity to be in front of another human being and to demonstrate like a little bit of like go get them
Yeah.
has sort of like, there are a lot of different mechanisms whereby I think young people have been, I don't want to say robbed of it, but like where things have shifted in such a way where like, you know, a lot of us are remote now. And so that
Yeah.
mentorship culture doesn't necessarily exist in the same sort of like way that it used to. And it's so important that it does, and that we find that young people find ways for that to happen, because like, I mean, that's the rock story is the way it was done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you'd be in a college class, and I mean, anyone from our generation, certainly you're in that college class and somebody comes in from the industry and they're like, listen, when you're there, you got to make sure it's like all, like anything that they ask, like just do whatever, you know, whatever it takes to like get in front of somebody, get some FaceTime, do a little extra, and like, I definitely, from conversations with my daughter, I think there's this idea that maybe that,
Yeah, you almost have
that
to
you
show up
can't.
like in the title already.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like there isn't a lot of room for like, we could push it here. You know, the Crispin had that thing on the wall that was good enough sucks.
Good enough sucks,
And
yeah.
I think that is indicative of like, even like making that rock selection hinted at like your lust for like what the
Rocks.
real deal needs to be though. Like, right? Like
yeah,
it's, and
yeah,
paying
like
attention
how
to that
healthy are
detail.
you really being,
Yeah.
and like, you know, how much sweater do you need to be in order to like do the thing. But it was so tremendously entertaining. Like I look back at like literally I'd walk in and they would give me like grocery lists, quote unquote, and it would be like go to the sex shop and find a vibrator,
toys,
the
yes.
adult toys, and you know, it's got to look like, it's got to be red, and it shouldn't look like biologically correct, and like literally like lists of things like that.
Yeah.
So that you'd go all over. Like I was at a Hare Krishna temple one time getting samples of their art because somebody needed to do like, to have that as like an example. And it's like, it was a blast, like such a blast to do. Go get a rock today.
Yeah.
Or find a place where I remember we were pitching Chupa Chups. Remember
Yeah,
Chupa Chups?
the lollipops.
We were pitching Chupa Chups. I needed to find a wholesaler for you know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know. I wasn't just a kid. I was 27. I was like the oldest intern in the world. But like at the same time, it felt like, I don't know. It was just like more interesting than your average job. And I forgot where we started with all this.
Well, we were kind of in the realm of like the opportunity presenting itself. And I don't feel like a lot of times, unlike the way that someone gets just an assignment and you go online, you find the perfect visual or near perfect visual, you ask Gemini to make it, whatever it is, it's just a different world now.
It is.
And that opportunity to like dive in. And it is funny because like I always say this, whether I'm talking to you, Evan, a lot of the ex-Crispin dudes, I feel like I get this like spiritual MBA from you guys. And you were telling me about this game you play, and it's funny that we started about talking about the past.
Right.
Because the game about the past where you only try and speak in the present.
So it's funny. How am I going to link this? So what I would say is, so I've been freelancing as a creative professional for.
Can I stop you on freelance?
Yes.
Do you like that word? Does it
I
feel
don't
cheap
mind
to you?
it. I don't mind it.
I always feel like it's like someone who's not going to show up
I
necessarily.
resisted it a lot. I resisted
Am I
it.
wrong in that?
I resisted it a lot at the very beginning of the thing and what I did was I LLC'd up with a name that sounded like an agency name.
Yeah, which I think is great.
Which was Daughters and Howard. And my thought was, well, I'll start there and I'll see how this thing progresses. Like I won't necessarily call myself a freelancer. I won't necessarily call myself an agency, and I'll see where it goes. And I think little by little, it's funny because I think probably agencies went through this cycle too, where it's like, I don't want to call myself an advertising agency anymore. I want to call myself I don't know, like
Problem solver, think tank,
all those
whatever
things.
it is.
Right,
yeah.
right. And I think what ends up happening is like, it's like all words are just handy. Like ultimately it's like, the work that you do will end up defining who you are as a freelancer, whether you show up, for example.
Yeah.
Now I think, and you kind of operate in a very similar way,
Yeah,
right?
I
Like
call myself an independent though,
Yeah.
because I usually But I've purposely thought about it's just words to use too, right?
It is.
So-
It's very difficult because like I actively avoided. Like somebody asked me to write an essay for their blog that was about freelancing, and it was all about how I don't want to call myself a freelancer, and that was 14 years ago now.
Yeah.
So
you've gotten over it.
I've gotten over it. Exactly. And it's like I think it's an appropriate term, and I guess so. Where I was going with this, where that was concerned, was I think what's interesting certainly about doing things yourself. When you're by yourself, is that it becomes a philosophical / spiritual pursuit in a way, because it's not just the brass tacks. It's not like, how to set up an LLC and like, what am I going to charge for a day rate and all those things. It becomes like management of personalities. And a lot of times management of personalities in a situation where you're thrown into the mix with brand new people and you've got to get a beat on it really in a hurry, right? It's like, what are the dynamics at play here? Who's the person that I'm really talking to?
Who's going to make the final decision?
Who's going to make the final
this?
decision?
Yeah.
Like, how does it all go? And and also too, how do you be really easy? Mm-hmm. And and like water, if you will, within the whole thing. So it's funny because I think over the course of the 14 years doing it for myself, it's become as much a spiritual pursuit or a philosophical pursuit as it is a creative pursuit. And I really love the way those two intermingle. The thing you're talking about is a friend of mine, and I didn't start the game. I didn't make up the name of the game,
right.
and I'm not very good at the game either. Because
premise of the game though.
The premise of the game is, it's called a past fast.
Meaning like
friends.
fast, like
Past, like breakfast, like fast. I'm fasting and I'm not having the past. And the idea is that you have to engage in a conversation for days, forever, whatever, in present tense completely. And you have to find a way to express the things you want to express without relying on storytelling.
or the past,
Right.
which is
incredibly
really
difficult. And I think what's more difficult still is that it's funny because we call ourselves storytellers in this business, and I love a good story, man. I love to tell you about that
you're
time.
a writer, you have to, yeah.
So what's interesting is as you engage in it, what you end up realizing is how much we trade in story, almost as gamesmanship. In a non-healthy way, right?
Sometimes I think sometimes it can be really, yeah.
Sometimes, and I think what ends up happening is you've got a story about how bad your day was, and I got a story, dude. You think your day was bad? My day was I'm going to tell you about my day, and it doesn't always need to be bad. Unfortunately, a lot of times it is. But even if it's good, it's I've got the Uno deck over here.
Then I have the best day.
I got the best day.
My day's way better than yours.
Dude, I did this thing one time that was and what you find is that you're playing the game over the person that you're supposed to be engaging with. And yeah, it's been one of the many things from a spiritual perspective. I'll say spirit. I'm saying spiritual. Just
it's easy. It's easier to put in a big cloud that whatever people
or
see.
Or philosophical perspective that continues to sort of unfold and make this an interesting pursuit, and probably more interesting than just the creativity itself is navigating stuff like that.
But don't you think that that's kind of like the creative pursuit and almost like constraints in some way, right?
Absolutely.
It's almost like working on a different muscle. I just thought it was really interesting when you talked about that because I do think it just forces us. And I've always heard that Jeff Bezos quote, celebrate for a minute and move on. Have you ever heard of that?
I've never heard it, but
and I was
I know
was mad
that
at him for that because I do think that sometimes when we were just hinting at it earlier, there's sometimes we make stuff where you're I didn't see my family for 3 months, and then it's on a bookshelf for a minute, or it plays during the Super Bowl, or whatever it is, and it's so temporal and it's gone. It's so what's the value of it? And
what's cool too is even from a failure perspective, right? Celebrate for a moment.
Yeah.
So if you've ever seen the NBA All-Star Weekend, there's the 3-point shoot off, right? And this was actually given to me as an example at one point in time, and I thought it was so freaking perfect. It's like when they're popping them off in a hurry, no one goes, fuck, missed it. Nobody even spends a split second going, you can't even see it in their face. It's just next one. And it's just successes, yes, but failures, dude, as long as you got the pipeline filled, like it's time to continue forward where that's concerned, And it keeps, again, that's a very present.
But failure
present
too,
moment.
I think in creative circles is very different. And I always use the skateboarding reference, right? Like, it's all, you fall down so many times that my perception of failure, like even I think about like getting to a finished layout. You and I worked on these together.
Yes, we did.
And it was like, it didn't come out of the box. Like we translated from the bag to this thing. There was a lot of like, well, that's not working. And that's just, to me, that's the problem solving methodology.
The muscle is so interesting because it's like, I catch myself in my personal life, and my kids can attest to this, where like you give feedback and we forget like the arc of us receiving feedback as creatives has gone through over the course of our careers, like a pretty dramatic, like the first time you get your ass handed to you from a feedback perspective, it's a brutal takedown. Like it feels very personal and emotional. And then you get to the point where you understand it's just this is just how we conduct business.
Right. And how creative really gets better.
And how creative gets really better, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's never mean-spirited, it's just blunt, you know what I mean? Or honest. Hopefully,
or forward,
Hopefully it's honest, right? And then it gets to the root of something that even you knew, but didn't allow yourself to think.
Yeah.
And then you try to pull it on your kid. And your kid, and it's like not, it doesn't feel, it's not gentle like what we do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
that is an interesting construct. The notion of critique these days is it's a tough one. I don't think enough dialogue happens around like making work better these days, outside of like academic institutions. And because like I feel like, well, tell me, how's it work in your world of review?
Well, no, I'm curious too, because you are in the academic world.
Yeah.
Like you probably are exposed more to that at an earlier stage than I am. And it's funny, like even like little things, like a funny example is like I use super fun and super cute as in an unironic way.
Yeah.
To other creatives, and people think I'm fucking with them.
Huh.
Like, oh my God, that's super fun. Oh my God, that's super cute. And I mean it. Like, it's like super, like, I don't know, like, it's not like.
I don't know if I've ever heard you say anything that you don't mean.
No,
like that's what's funny.
But I've been, like, I've seen it in their eyes. Like, are you, like, is that? And I'm like, no, I'm being, like, genuine,
sincere,
right?
yeah.
So, like, how do you find young talent, students, receiving?
It's varied for sure. I think a lot of times my creative feedback strategy is I'm not throwing away work. Let's make this work.
Right.
That's I think I went to teach a design portfolio to advertising students, and advertising students were like, give us new assignments so we can make a new portfolio.
Right.
I was like, let me see your work and let's edit that work. That's a very different, like that subtlety in how design looks at work. And so like, that's how I've always critiqued, whether it's ads, whether it's layouts, books, whatever it is. I've always been in the more of like, let's work with this. And that, one of the formative worlds in my design education was I had a design professor that would never throw away our work. He would just take your work and show you it like the way it should have been done.
I think you told me about this. The
and
guy
he would
who
take
would
your
like
poster,
change it, fold it.
and he would fold things down, and then you'd get given this little crumpled piece of paper, and you'd look, and there was the thing you made, but it was about 200 times better. And you're like, holy shit.
So
and if you could
amazing.
absorb and you're like, listen and pay attention, that's what I was always looking for.
With CPB, and I think I got a little bit of this training. I look back now, it's so funny. Like I was only in the business at all. I ended up getting, my first job in creative was in Boston. It wasn't at Crispin. It was, I went to law school for 4 months in the middle there somewhere, which was a horrible idea almost immediately.
See, you can take some deltas in this. You can kind of try some other careers.
It was just tremendously bad. But when I left there, I went to a place called Arnold in Boston that at the time was doing a lot of like Volkswagen work. And they were also working on Truth, the anti-tobacco account. So I kind of was working with the folks at CPB again. But I'm sorry, I'm forgetting where I was going with this. Oh, we were talking about learning on the job.
Yeah.
So like you get a good idea. It's like, oh, it's a really good idea. And like you feel like it's a really good idea. And it's like you're everything. And then what I'm realizing, what's funny, like, is I don't think when I got to CPB that I was good enough at like giving folks a lot to respond to. And it's funny, like at my age, like I feel like maybe within the last, 10 years, I've really gotten accustomed to the idea that my job is not to make stuff. My job is to bring you stuff that like I think is really rad, but it's also to give you a lot of stuff that you can see what is like, so that you can see what is wrong, right? Or
Yeah.
like what won't work, right? And to just give folks a lot of stuff to respond to, because outside of response, you don't, like, what are you gonna do? Like, yeah, that sounds like vaguely like a good idea, I guess. And that was funny too, because looking back, sitting in that recliner in Alex's office, there were a lot of times where younger creators would walk in with that situation, and it was dreadful to watch too. Because it was like, because Alex will just be like, I don't know, man. Like, and like, you're basically listening to somebody go, like, like, it'd be like if you, but like, and like, it literally would be like, you'd be in situations like that. And it's like watching somebody bomb on stage,
Yeah.
like at a
And you're
comedy
like,
club,
"Ooh,
and you're like, "Ugh."
can I help you?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
he'll just be like, I think you have an idea, but I think you need to go back and like write the idea, like, so that it is an idea.
Yeah, but I
doesn't.
think what you're getting at too is like, like I think everyone, we were talking about shticks earlier
Yeah.
and like how people present and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, exactly.
I think there's actually shticks of like how creative people get their work done. I see myself as catalytic. I can't really do anything until someone puts the stuff into me. And I feel like you're hinting a little bit of that in the way that you're going to show people
Yeah.
a lot of work, because
Yeah.
once they trigger into it, and now all of a sudden that's that sweet spot of you've got buy-in, and now this is their idea too.
And it's your position. It's there's no ownership that way, right?
Yes.
Like you sort of, it's funny. This will get back to philosophy too. Like I think where as a creative you get in trouble is when you get attached, right? And like this is very sort of like Buddhist, I guess. And it's true. Like if you think that somebody took your idea, or that somebody is like encroaching upon your idea, if you've got this kind of an attitude where you're like,
I call it prison lunch.
Right,
Yeah.
prison lunch attitude. It sort of presupposes that you'll never come up with another one, right? They're infinite. Ideas are infinite. They're and if you think that one's like that somebody stole it, or that like somehow now your creative director or whoever you're reporting to has ownership of that thing. And this, by the way, goes for a lot of things. If you remove the value that with which you hold a thing, you've removed the opportunity for theft. There is no theft if I don't value anything. Do you know what I mean?
You're getting
Like
in a
if
little bit of the Course in Miracles
there's
for
a
us
little,
now.
I mean,
Yeah.
but it, yeah, you know, do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no,
And
I
it is
totally
very
get it.
sort of like the way and this is actually a Taoist thing too. It's like, if you have no value for jewels, there's no such thing as theft.
Right.
And it's funny. I mean, it comes up certainly with the AI discussion, and this is not like a Max bashing session. If Max is here, I don't think he is. But it's funny. We do have very different attitudes where that's concerned. Like I do think like photo comps, for example, like we were going back there, like photo comps become what AI does.
Right.
We've all done it.
Yes.
Like it's like you're ripping off work, but it isn't the same thing. It's like you're doing it so that you can sell something bigger. But I do think like if you're giving people ideas,
Yep.
and you're giving to with a free and open heart, there's an opportunity for those ideas to grow and flourish, and you never
But
run
I
out
think
of them.
that's back to this openness and like curiosity thing about you, and whether it's Taoist or whether it's Buddhist or wherever it's coming from. I think it's like an interesting judo, because as someone who grew up in design,
Judo's funny too.
I would always take it to like how do we make this like somewhat violent or something. But it's like I think one of the things that I was kind of taught very early on with design, it comes up a lot here when we talk about it, subjectivity versus objectivity, and within that somewhere exists this thing of like, where's my ego?
Yeah.
In it. And so I believe that subjectivity a lot is built into design, particularly as a way to say, this isn't about me, it's about your audience or what the thing needed. Design is very rarely about the person who made it. Sometimes advertising is like, I've met enough dudes that'll be like, you run a B2B software company? We need to put a kid in a gorilla suit and jump over a pizza truck. And you're like, where did that even come from? But the point is like a lot of times, I think what you're aiming for is how to like remove, my feelings get hurt if this doesn't see the light of day.
Right.
But by giving the idea out in openness and go ahead and run with it. I told you about the thing, like someone would be like, you designed that whole brand. And I'm like, yeah, but my headline is on the website and I don't write,
that's so
dude.
funny.
Like, and I'm so excited by that.
And it's funny, like I'm trying more and more to see, and I guess I always have, but like, I think it's the difference between like when you're young and you need a body of work versus when you can start divorcing yourself from the outcome of it and just have fun. And I think like I know that I've been very guilty. And I think probably a lot of it has to do with the fact that I was hired without a body of work and had to build a body of work within while I was working. So you feel very sort of like, well, if I lose my job tomorrow, what will I do if I haven't got a body of work to get another job? And so it becomes incredibly important, like every outcome and making the things that you're like, presenting things, but not only presenting things, but making them happen becomes incredibly, like you're gripping onto it like that, those things really hard and they hurt a lot when they don't happen. Now I have the luxury of having a body of work now. And I think probably I can't ignore that luxury, but at the same time, I do feel like I'm a happier person now that I interact with people all the time who are like, Mike, I just want to make sure that I can sell this work in the manner in which it deserves. And I'm like, dude, I don't care. Like, I don't care how if you love it, I think that's so great. Like, I'm satisfied there. And if you sell it to the client, that's lovely too, but we've had fun. Like I've enjoyed myself, made you laugh. This has been a good thing.
I had a very interesting opportunity. I was asked by an ad agency to come in and help with them. They saw some stuff I'd done and they're like, yeah, well, you should come in and help us out on this. This would be fun. It was the first time I'd ever heard design and fun together, which to me,
what a sad thing.
Like it's very strange, right? But you told me, and I thought this was great. And I actually think I've actually worked on shit where I'm laughing my ass off at my desk and my wife will be like, what are you laughing about? I'm like, you gotta come see. It's so dumb. It's like, just come look at it.
It's wonderful.
But happiness is an important thing. And you told me, I like to laugh a lot. And I was like, that's really cool. I don't think a lot of people think about that. And fun is a thing that is often talked about in advertising. But taking it to happiness, whether it's design, advertising, art, any experience where there's a lot of change in it, right? I think, and it could be any industry. Maybe it's even automotive. I don't know if those guys are having fun. I do feel like it's easy, and I know I can do it. It's possible to just kind of grind through stuff, right?
Yes.
And I've even experienced people that are super good at what they do, and they're miserable, And and that fact that you're like, I do. I just laugh a lot. Do you have a pursuit of happiness, or do you have a supply of it?
100%. It's a pursuit. I'm an incredibly. I think.
So you're in constant quest of happiness.
Constant quest of happiness, and actually, at one point in time, one of my children. Who's dozing off right here? One of my children pointed out my bookcase, and I hadn't noticed that. I've got one of those bookcases. I don't know, you've seen those before, the ones that look like they're stacked.
And it looks great when you're on conference calls.
Totally,
and
exactly.
Yeah.
But pointed out the fact that all of the books, or a great number of, a great vast majority of them, could fall into these sort of you're looking for, it's here's a Dalai Lama, and here's it's all happiness pursuit things. And I think that I'm going to say this. It's hard to be sort of subjective about yourself or whatever. I think
it's hard to be objective.
I think that people would say generally speaking that I'm an extremely happy person, and yet I often feel the exact opposite. And so trying to seeking it constantly has actually led to some really fun things. And I think first and foremost among them is I've become a much happier person since I became sober.
Yeah.
Which was, and I didn't know if you were going to get into it or not.
Yeah.
I certainly have no problem getting, this is now 6 years now. And it's the single most important factor in my current happiness. If I'd had any idea how much happier it would make me being sober, I would have done it a long time ago. But then again, the woulda, coulda, shouldas in life, you need to go through your arc.
Right.
But there is it is the single. I've never been happier, I guess.
Yeah,
is the
and
sort of
I think that's
short
interesting
answer.
because I was curious. Do you feel can you work when you're not happy? I mean, we almost have to, but you can't.
Sorry, can't is a really bad word.
Yeah.
I can work when I'm not happy. It's incredibly inefficient, and what I'm learning is, and we talked about this a little bit about the rhythms of. Certainly creative work, but probably life in general. I hate to just say it's just a creative thing because I don't think that's the case. But understanding when it's not going to happen is so important. And when it's not going to happen typically is when vibrationally speaking, you're not doing something that's making you happy currently.
Right.
And the way to get back there is to go chase that happy a little bit. And like, you'll find your way back to where it ought to be, because I don't know in all of my, I just recently, by the way, I just this morning in the shower realized that last month was my 25th year doing this. And in my 25 years of doing it, I don't know that I've ever come up with a single idea while sitting at my desk, like banging my head.
Yeah.
I do know that I have to bang my head on, like I have to stare at the screen for a little while.
Yeah.
But it almost always happens someplace else. And the more you trust that, the more you trust the idea that like, look, you're miserable sitting here right now, but like you won't be miserable if you go up to Eldora and like do 7 laps.
Yeah.
And probably you'll be thinking about it the whole time anyway. Or even if you're not, you'll be like in a space where you can.
Well, I think 2 things telling about that. Number one, a lot of creatives, I harp on them, particularly my design students, is I'm like, figure out the way you work best.
Yeah, exactly.
And I wish somebody had told me that, because I grew up in the military. You just worked in the confine you were stuck into, right? And that's not necessarily ideal for expressive making, let's call it, right? Or like, man, I put my full thought into this. It's more of like, yeah, you can crack it out. And I thought that was really interesting that you're kind of like hinting in at like, I know this isn't going to happen
today.
So yeah,
in this moment, it's probably not going to happen. And then recognizing that is such a like opener. Like you suddenly you're like, oh, I can feel what this feels like. And you save a tremendous amount of time. Like, 1, 2, 3, nope, don't feel like it. Let's go do something else.
You've been an independent for a really long time, and has that taken you out of that? Yeah, that's me. You've worked on your own for a long time. I felt like when I started my practice working very independently, there was a change in the way that I started having time to like figure out why I was doing what I was doing. I started paying attention. It could be my age, could be a lot of things, but I also felt like I wasn't in an environment where I was sharing that with other creatives. So getting to these thoughts of like, it's not going to happen. In my desk, I often go, I know I will not make progress on this. Let's go work on this other thing. And then in that act, you end up usually solving the other thing.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm going to call it a little callback back to the sort of like philosophical pursuit of like what we do, because we're not involved in an organization that structures things. We've got to find our own structures. And a lot of times those structures end up being things that end up feeling more like grander views of life. Right. And like like following your best vibration is like a pretty grand view of life. And like, it doesn't necessarily need to be a creative thing,
right?
But in order to like apply structure to what ultimately would be something you could like crawl into a corner, take a nap all day long if you wanted to. But like I've
done that. For short ones,
absolutely.
Short naps,
100 short. We're very good at it. We're older. But like I have a friend of mine who's a really accomplished, he's just chief creative officer. Actually, if you guys have ever seen the Flow commercials, hi Sean, wherever you are. He was, when I first started freelancing, he was like, dude, I would just play my guitar all day. And I'm like, I know you and I know you wouldn't, but it's interesting that you believe that about yourself. And maybe that's like the best way to approach it. And I'm forgetting where we started again.
Well, we started in this notion of like, how do we start to like figure out the ways we work best?
Yeah.
And yours was, I know I'm not getting this done. I'm going to go out. I think that was one of my insight on like, I like this guy, was you would sign stuff off at like 5:42 in the morning. You're on the Flatiron and it says like linked out.
Oh, that's funny.
Yes. Okay, and I loved this because I get the sense that we're all in that world. We go check LinkedIn and that's a whole space that can be really, I don't know, it's polarizing right?
I think it's with the LinkedIn thing. So it's funny because we're independent.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're not as like LinkedIn-y, are you?
No.
Good for you. I think that, look, I'm as guilty as anybody else of like drifting off to a LinkedIn tab or something like that and just like checking out what's going on. And honestly, it's like so like you're so absent when you're doing it. Like I tend to like the environment of Instagram just a little bit more because I got it dialed into like skiing and like
you're seeing the stuff you want to see.
More stuff, right?
The algorithm works when it's like, oh, I like this.
When I like it, right? Yeah. Exactly. But the thing about LinkedIn too, it's funny. Like I think what I field a lot of phone calls from folks who are other independents, freelancers, whatever, who are either doing it or they're about to do it. And like I have got like a pretty but I think very good and well established like conversation that I have with them that lasts about an hour and a half. And it's like, here's what you do, and like
this is your guide, your playbook for freelance people.
Playbook for freelance people. Right?
You don't just tell them don't do it.
No, I talk myself.
See, you're too optimistic.
No, you know what's fun is it's like every time I kind of get down on it, one of those phone calls will happen.
Yeah.
And and this is a big sobriety thing actually too. Is like, you know, the time you owe to somebody who's getting sober will reinforce your own sobriety. The time you owe to somebody who's considering freelance or being in this industry, generally speaking, or doing anything really, will reinforce the way that you feel about it. It's like, but I've never felt shittier about my job, having spent time telling people about my job. Like, it's awesome. And by the way, just counterpoint, I've been involved in organizations where like, hey, let's go for lunch because it's an interview lunch, and you try to sell the organization that you're involved with currently, and you just feel filthy. Like you just feel, it's like, nah, I mean, like, if I'm being honest, dude, you should probably turn around, but like, you got to do it because this is your job. Like you're not in the right place. You know what I mean? But I've never once had the conversation about doing what we do and haven't been inspired by this sort of entrepreneurialism of it, by this sort of like self-starter nature of it. Like, I'm amazed. You sit in like your Airstream, right? And like you set up a lemonade stand, and people buy the fucking lemonade.
Yeah.
It's like amazing. And they do it on such a, like, the evidence over 14 years of having done it. I don't know how long you've done it.
Yeah, 15.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
on my own.
The evidence continues. So this is getting back to the LinkedIn thing. The evidence on LinkedIn is we are in a tremendous career crisis.
Yeah. Particularly ads. Or do you think creativity as a whole?
Certainly advertising. I mean, I think like AI is like a harbinger of doom.
Yeah,
no
depending
matter how
your point
you
of
look at
view,
it,
for sure.
Depending on your point of view, exactly. But if you exist within the LinkedIn evidence world, you are convinced that like your days are numbered on a fairly like urgent basis, right? Whereas if you look at the evidence presented to us as human beings, like, I don't know, sometimes things get slower, but I find like they're exactly as slow as you want them to be, right? Like last year, it's funny, like, okay, so I could tell this story. Last year was like I would say slower than average year.
Yep.
I also, last year, my father was in a situation where, because of his deteriorating health, there were a lot, I'm an only child, so he's my deal kind of a thing, where there was a lot to handle. And he hadn't handled it.
But if you had a normal job, how do you do this? Or a full banging schedule,
yeah,
too. Exactly.
Or if like work had been continual in that particular way, I don't think that we could have done it. And it was a year. It spanned from March to now.
Yeah.
Something would have had to give, and what it would have been was work. Or unfortunately, it probably would have been him. And by the way, that's not like my like sacrifice on his behalf, quote unquote. It's not real. It's just what I noticed is that things moved out of the way.
Yeah.
And like maybe things moved out of the way and that felt like, oh my God, I'm not getting another job, but I was busy. Like if you ever want to realize how busy you really are, try to start something else. Like try to get something else done, and you're suddenly the most fucking busy human being on the planet.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how unbusy you think you are. Like the down out thing that I just started. Like I'm still trying to figure out pipes and stuff like that. And every time I want to like move over to do like my fun little like side project daily, like work intrudes, and that's an awesome thing.
Yeah.
Like it's a treat.
It does reinforce like just the mechanic of actually running a business.
That's exactly
too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. By the way, his Townowism, that's where all these shirts are coming from, so you guys should check them out. I want to move us into the lightning round here.
Okay, cool.
So I'm going to fire you a couple quick fire questions.
Ryan, lightning round.
We go, so these are going to be ones where you can just say yes, no, maybe, I don't know.
This would scare me.
Agency or freelance?
Freelance.
Freelance or independent?
Independent now. Yeah, okay, I like
good. That. Exploration or production?
Exploration.
Always, right?
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is without trashing anybody whatsoever, any particular person. But I think that there is a way to be addicted to production. And I say addicted meaning like I know the hotel I'm going to stay at. I know the room service menu. And I'm not really focused on what I ought to be focused on, which is like making fun, good stuff, right? So anyway, sorry.
No, that's good. I love that. Peace or ambition? Can you have them? Yeah.
Peace. Yeah, so much so. Ambition is a toughie, man. Ambition will hurt.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of like, I don't want to call it remorse, but maybe that's the word to put it into. When I talk about a lot of people that I regard their careers in some degree of like, man, you've done a lot. A lot of times I feel like there's a lot of like, I wish I didn't have
so
some of the
much,
ambition
right?
removed me from other things.
It's unbelievable. It is like there's a point in time where I think probably ambition is really useful. Again, this is story like your life arc, right?
Yeah.
Like you're like discovering an arc. But what am I willing to sacrifice on the altar of my peace currently? Like not a lot. There's not a lot.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a really interesting point to get to is when you start to go on the scale, like, does happiness outweigh money or whatever it is?
Does being right outweigh happiness?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that, like, when you're dealing with, like, it's funny because that's a life thing, but it's also a really big client thing.
Yeah.
Like, is my being correct or my being, like
owning the whole idea,
a lauded creative in like the field is like all that willing, like, dude, I got another idea for you. I have another idea. That's okay. Don't kill it. It's fine. There's infinite ideas.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry.
Spiritual and metaphysical.
Spiritual. Yeah, deeply, deeply important to me. Deeply. Anyway, that's
Love it. That's the right
answer. Right?
There is no wrong answer. Write it fast or rewrite it forever.
Write it fast.
Yeah.
Dude, no.
I love that.
Rewriting. Eesh.
I don't like editing. I'd rather go do another thing.
No, I'd rather
Yeah.
completely. I mean, it needs to happen. You need to learn how to rewrite.
Yeah.
But at some point, just the belaboring of a thing is like, dude, at some point, how do we get here?
Overwork.
It's like,
Yeah. Big campaigns or small weird ideas.
small weird ideas.
Every time.
Budgets are the worst because everyone pays attention to a budget. And small ideas are like that talking eyeball. I don't know if you guys saw that in like the on the little montage that
With the mustache. Yeah.
So basically, like, and it's funny. What if I may, just because I know this is lightning round. Right? There was a production guy I knew who he had a client called 2020 On-Site Optometry. It was a guy who had an RV, and the way it worked is, if you have optometry through your insurance, your HR people will handle that. And basically what they were like is like, oh, we're going to do a business where we had a full mobile optometry unit.
And it comes to your work.
And they come to your work and they handle everybody all at once. And the HR person sets it up and you make an appointment and you pop in for the day or whatever. And they were like, they wanted to do with the production company, they wanted to do testimonials from HR people. And my buddy called me up and he was like, I think there's like maybe some fun to be had. It's like, it's optometry. They seem open to a fun idea. And literally, so I got off the phone with the guy, I talked to him for a little bit. I sat with my wife in our backyard and I was like, hey, hold on one second. I ran down, my wife keeps a craft room for the kids. And she had two little googly eyes. And I had my iPhone and I stuck them to the top of my, above my eyebrow, which immediately creates a mustache. And then you can kind of go like this with your iPhone and make your eye talk, right? And so they become eye testimonials. So so that literally happened within a split second. He like bought it hook, line, and sinker. We got some like kids from Mass Fine Arts to like do like a more intricate version of what those googly eyes might be. But like it was so fucking fun and like. I don't know. Look, this isn't a small amount of money, but 30 grand in the grand scheme of advertising is not a lot of dough. And we had a blast. And it was just like, I don't know.
But when things can make themselves like that and there's flow to it, that's the ideal, if you ask me.
But if a budget would have killed all, a budget would have made it yucky. Like it just would have like, then we got to like, there's CGI involved and like, I don't want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just like.
It would like overwork it.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Ryan.
Analog or digital?
Analog.
Oh, I thought that was going to be so easy for you.
Analog.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was thinking of it in terms of like, I guess like all tools are like on within limits, right? Like I guess analog. Like I like things that look and feel real and like going back to the eyeball thing. I liked that it was made of clay and shit like that.
Well, and it was even interesting when we did the packaging that like. I feel like we do so many things that are even ads now, like spots.
Yeah.
There isn't you can't hold it.
Making a thing is so, it's funny. We have a couple of our friends here. We have a friend who just started a tequila company and he did it like within a year. And he like, it was funny. The joke was, I was like, dude, you made a thing. And he doesn't understand because he's not advertising. But like a friend of mine, like a common friend was there who was, and he was like, he's saying you made a thing because we make etheria.
Yeah.
Right? Like we make things that go
But
away.
even when we talked about the coffee packaging,
Oh my God,
we were like,
so
dude,
much fun. Yeah,
it's so
because you
cool.
can
Like
see it.
you
I can
can
see it in
walk
the
in the
store.
store.
Right,
or something.
exactly.
Yeah, it's cool.
Sorry, you can pump it.
This is going to throw you. Buddha or Bodhi, as in Swayze from Point Break.
Same. Yeah, no,
Nice.
both.
They're
Both
one and the
completely
same.
both. Bodhi's amazing. Are you kidding me?
One great idea or 10 good ideas?
10 good ideas. Although I'm guilty of one great idea. Like I fall in love.
Yeah.
But like, I'm
In the catalyst world, though.
but
like,
I'm getting over it. I'm
Yeah.
getting over falling in love completely. And if I feel good about it.
interesting.
Yeah, they're just ideas.
I think I know where we're going to go with this one just based on Instagram post, but sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise. Just because we got one here, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I also, one of the funny things about sobriety was I lost the ability to sleep on any kind of regular basis. So I didn't know when I was going to wake up. So a lot of times this morning I found myself awake at 3:30 a.m. And so this is 6 years in now. And then what I did at some point in time was I was like, I'm just going to make that my superpower. So now I get this cool like optimist arc. So like you go from like dark, working in the dark to like, it's not, dude, you don't see the sun go down. You see it come up.
Yeah.
And when you see it come up, it fucking feels so energy, like it's excited particles, right?
Yeah.
Like you're warming yourself, like literally.
I think there has to be something like in us from caveman
100%,
times, right? Like,
It's
oh
like
God,
the
we
end
survived
of the
another
night.
one.
We survived another
Yeah.
night, exactly, and it's such a cool arc.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, that's
Blah,
great.
blah, blah.
In kind of reviewing our outline, I want to talk a little bit about peace here. It's something that I feel like in my kind of current, long I've been doing it, I feel like I didn't pay attention to peace, and it had to be like an opportunity that you kind of need to be like aware of and acknowledge it. You've been in the business long enough to see like multiple waves of change, print, web, social, AI. It's kind of interesting to think about, like, it's such a crazy industry. And as a whole, like, is it possible to find peace in the uncertainty that is the industry? Is there like a trick to it? Is there a judo?
I think that like witnessing it over a period of time and how it's changed will alleviate your stress. I mean, like not completely so, I don't think.
Yeah.
And like certainly, you know, we've all got families to feed and things like that. But I do think that that understanding that that it's the people that the human beings that we work together with.
Yeah.
That really are that, like, it's not the business. It's not like there are a group of human beings that are brothers and sisters that we work with, and that and they will never let us down. They will never let us down. We won't let each other down. It'll seem like we will.
Yeah.
You know, we're at war right now, but ultimately, yeah, it's about like this is really good. Like being in front of other human beings. Like, you know, you're in front of other human beings. You put another human being in a car, you've separated yourself a little bit,
Yeah.
and the peace goes down exponentially. Then you put them on social media and you're invisible, it goes down way exponentially. You know what I mean? But like, as long as this keeps happening in some way, shape, or form, like we're
okay.
Business is
Yeah.
going to be fine. This is us. We're business, you know?
I was interested, like, because I often think about, like, you know, getting started in this career, and if I was to ask you, Mike, define peace 20 years ago, is that definition different today than it was then? What would it look like at 20 years
I don't
ago?
know if I could have achieved it. Like, I don't know if I ever like got an opportunity to like touch peace. It might have been like, it might have been like an MDMA thing. You know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah. Like I remember the first time, like, sorry kids, the first time, like it was a really good like X thing.
Yeah.
And it, for me anyway, like as like a person like from a therapy, and it wasn't, by the way, like today it's therapy, then it was a party.
Yeah.
But like I remember waking
have
up
changed.
the following day and feeling like, why can't I
Always be like
always feel like that? Like, and
Yeah.
it doesn't feel unreasonable to always feel like that. It really doesn't. And yet, yeah, like who knew? Like, it
Is
would
your
take sobriety,
current
like-
definition then of peace more like you find a more?
It definitely is like it's elusive, but knowing where knowing how to come back to it is really nice. Like I think I'm finding like now, like hopefully, I mean, like it's funny. We all get like triggered. Like my kids will tell you, I'm a yeller. And
I used to say I yell because I care.
I yell because I care.
Yeah.
It's so great. But hopefully, like, I think at least now I understand, like, like 9 times out of 10, I'm mostly mad at me.
Yeah.
And I also feel like I'm trying to do a better job where all that's concerned, guys. And I think, I think just understanding that, like, you're not, again, what am I willing to sacrifice on the altar of my peace? Absolutely nothing these days. You know what I mean?
Right.
And every now and then it will just like, you'll have to remember that. But I think
that's the hard part,
good.
right? Like constructing these guides, if you will, guidelines. I don't want to even use the word rules, but like that we have to hold ourselves to. And I do think that's super important. Mike, awesome talk.
Dude.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you all.
Thanks for coming.